Hello, good morning. We are so pleased to welcome Mary Ellen VanSlembrouck, and she's one of our own. And I got her to come and talk to us, and I think she's talked to a lot of other places since. So she's very experienced. She's a advanced master gardener and master composter. And she's also the co-director of gardens at Meadowbrook here. And she is very good at everything, but butterflies especially. She is good at identifying plants. We always get her to help us. She's going to review the egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, and adult butterfly stages. She will talk about the importance of host plants and nectar plants. A few surprise gardener visitors will be featured in the presentation. So Mary Ellen has volunteered at Ray Wiggins Nursery Butterfly House. And I also mentioned you were co-director of gardens here. So very pleased to welcome Mary Ellen to speak to us today.
Good morning. I'm so pleased to be here, especially in person. I have been doing a lot of Zoom presentations, so it's nice to actually be in a room with the people. And hopefully we're making a nice recording for those listening at home. I did put the resources on the back of the handout if you don't want to copy all those websites now, but I'm a kinesthetic learner and I have to take notes when I listen. So whatever helps you remember, and it's going to take repetition. Some of these names are unfamiliar to us. This is called Butterflies in Your Backyard. I named it that because these are not things you'll see in a tropical butterfly house. These are what you're going to see in Southeast Michigan. And some of our earliest ones are the white ones that we call cabbage butterflies. Cabbage whites are not moths, they're butterflies. So for the most part, if it flies during the day and feeds during the day, it's a butterfly. For the most part, if it feeds at night, it's a moth, but there are exceptions. So we have some gorgeous moths in Michigan, and there'll be a surprise photo in here. Do we need this bar to go away, or? Yeah, it's back. We had to switch laptops. Thanks for your patience. So starting off, and I'm used to clicking and I'm scrolling now, so what's going on here?
Here's Big Mike. This ought to be interesting.
Oh, you know what? I might need to remind people listening on Zoom to turn off their mics so that, okay, there we go. Here's our first one. This is our smallest one. It's called the skipper, and they're smaller than a quarter. They fly extremely quickly. They dart around the garden, and there is a season for them. They're not an early appearing butterfly. They appear later. But just to emphasize how little, look at the little screw on the post. That's one of my signs that says it's certified by NABA, North American Butterfly Association. That little skipper is almost the size of the little screw on there holding the sign. He's feeding on the right. They're feeding on the tall summer ageratum. This is a perennial. It's about 3 feet tall. How's the sound, Paul?
Sounds great.
Is it echoing?
No, your sound is perfect. Tell me to disclose that.
Thank you. Thank you. And there's a big family of skippers, and they're hard to identify because there's so many. Oh, backwards, sorry. I'll get used to this. This one's called the clouded sulfur. It's just a pinch larger than a cabbage white. They are common. This one is feeding on aster. Aster is a fall blooming flower for us, and we need to remember to plant early, mid, and late so that we can support all the seasons of butterflies. Now, this one has come through my Sterling Heights backyard, but it came through so fast I couldn't get the image. This one I took in the Wiggins Butterfly House. These are gorgeous butterflies, common buckeye, and these are called false eye spots that you see on the wings. And those are to scare away predators. They'll flash their wings real quick and it looks like a face to a bird and it scares the birds away. So if you're wondering how many you can fit on your hand, There you go. All that beauty in that tiny little butterfly. These had come in a shipment and they were still warming up. So they would come in a box with a chill pack and they were still too cold to fly. So I held them on my hand about 1 minute and then they took off into the butterfly house. Common buckeyes, and they are common in this area. This one's a comma, C-O-M-M-A, like a punctuation mark. It has metallic markings on the underside of its wing. That's how it got its name. And these are called angle-winged butterflies. So when these butterflies close their wings and sit on a branch, you cannot see them. This one is called a question mark, also named after a punctuation mark. Thank you, Paul. This is the summer phase. There are different phases in some butterflies, a spring coloring, a summer coloring, or even later into the year, a fall coloring. This one's called the summer phase with those dark hind wings. They don't always appear in this color. This one I photographed in the Ray Wiggins Butterfly House. This is the metallic marking. Now, they say it looks like a question mark. To me, it looks like a backwards semicolon. I don't really see question mark, but okay. But when those wings are closed, look at that, how it looks like bark. If that's sitting on a tree, you can't see it. In my yard, the question marks and commas hang around in our apple tree when there's overripe fruit. This is one of your butterflies that does not drink nectar. They like overripe fruit. Some butterflies prefer animal droppings. And that's food. This is a way you can offer fruit to butterflies. Anything that's too old for you to serve to your family, save it, put it on a dish and give it to your butterfly. And if you notice, there's a proboscis, that's how they sip. I tell the kids when I tell kids this, it's like a silly straw. It rolls up when they fly and then it curls out and they use it like a straw. So different mouth parts for the adult butterfly and different mouth parts for the caterpillar. Here's my painted lady. She's a beauty. I raised her from an egg. I was working at Denois and they radioed me and said, Mary Ellen, come over to section 6. It's like, oh, okay, maybe they want me to talk about a plant. They said, what's on this plant? I said, oh my gosh, you got caterpillars. And they said, we don't want them. I'm throwing them in the dumpster. I said, no, you're not. You're selling them to me and I'm taking them home for my habitat. So I think I bought 8 curry plants and that's what the painted ladies were on. And these are 2 eye spots. So American lady starts with an A, only 2 eye spots. Painted lady starts with a P, later in the alphabet. P, this one's got 4 eye spots. So again, those eye spots are to scare predators. And that's one way you can keep these 2 apart. This one's on my dwarf Korean lilac. I have Caliban and they love it. I noticed there's a bumblebee on there to the lower right. And then there's also a set of antennae behind the butterfly. There's actually 3 pollinators drinking. And this is also a painted lady. Look at all the pink. So sometimes there'll be more orange, sometimes more pink. And this particular echinacea, this is coneflower. And it's a perennial for Michigan. It survives our winter, so they're considered hardy perennial. If they can't make it past 3 years, they're considered tender perennial. This painted lady loved this coneflower. It's in the Twilight series. They were really popular about 8 or 10 years ago. And this is our red admiral. The marks on the upper ring, like on a military uniform, that's how it gets its name, Red Admiral. This is common. They patrol. They're very bold. They will sit on your hair. They will sit on your shoulder. They'll follow you. Once they get used to the gardener in their space, they will follow you. They're very, sometimes friendly, sometimes aggressive. This is the same Red Admiral with the underwing. So the underwing can be quite different. Almost to me, it looks like a marble. That hind wing looks very marbly. And they love butterfly bush. This is Buddleia. This is your morning cloak. Has anybody here ever seen a butterfly in February in Michigan? Anybody? In my yard, I see them. It lives and survives a Michigan winter with ice and snow. as an adult butterfly. They hide behind shutters, they hide under shingles or in a log pile, or they'll find a little crease in a window treatment and they'll just snug in there and they'll come out on a warm February day. There's no flowers in February, but they'll take nourishment from sap on trees, or they will visit a feeding station. This feeding station has Gatorade, and that's a little plastic scrubby that you use for dishes. And you sterilize it in the dishwasher every other day so it doesn't grow mold. Some butterflies like Gatorade, or you can prepare your hummingbird nectar. 1 part sugar to 4 parts water. And then the lower right one I took out at Danny's cabin, they do a thing called patrolling. When the male is looking for females, they'll often either sit on the soil when they're patrolling, or they're gathering micronutrients from the soil. Here's our morning cloak eggs. These are the type of butterfly that lay them in huge clusters. There's over 100 eggs on this stem. So this is how I tell the kids, remember, if it's a morning cloak, starts with the M, it lays its eggs on willow, starts with a W. And those are gorgeous eggs. If you look at this recording later and enlarge those eggs, they're gorgeous. This one's called a fritillary. At first I thought it was a great spangled. I took this photo on Beavers Island, and then I looked it up some more with a better field guide. I do now think this is an Aphrodite, question mark. If anybody disagrees, let me know. And here's the underwing, same butterfly, fritillary. This is a medium-sized butterfly. It's bigger than the cabbage whites. It's not as big as the giant swallowtails. Here's our beautiful monarch. So they will take nectar from multiple families of plants, but they can only have their eggs survive on milkweed family. They have to have milkweeds to produce caterpillars. And caterpillars are something that, if you can turn that switch in your brain and say, caterpillars are okay, they're bird food, they support my songbirds, don't have to kill them or squish them or spray them. If you want butterflies, you want caterpillars. And penta, this flower is called Egyptian starflower. We know it as penta. It is an annual in Michigan. They come in white, pink, red. I think I've even seen a purple. They're very good producers because they produce so many florets. Every single one of those floret has nectar in it. And this is the male. So there's scent patches, or they're called pheromone patches on the hind wings. See the dots? Can you see the dots in the back? That's how you determine if it's a male or female. Plus the females are slightly larger because they have to carry the eggs. They have, when they're adult butterflies, they have all the eggs they'll ever need. And their structure is different. The markings are a little different. The females are much bigger. Verbena bonariensis is what we call a see-through perennial. I'd say about 3 feet. The stems are very delicate, very fine. This is one plant that you can actually put in the middle of your border because the other plants will show through it. It's very delicate, but oh my goodness, look at all those florets. The butterfly, all the butterflies and the beetles and the wasps, they all love this plant. And we need to let them drop seed. The herbaceous plant is not perennial, but they leave enough seed in your garden. And I wouldn't call them invasive. They're so delicate. Here's a paired set of monarchs. The male is on top, slightly smaller, female on the bottom, slightly larger. And they may fly paired for a couple hours, doesn't hurt her. He then presents her a nuptial gift of all the micronutrients and things that she needs to develop healthy eggs, which then develop into healthy caterpillars. So some people have been asking me, you know, I've been checking my milkweeds. I can't find the butterfly eggs. How come I don't see anything on my leaves? Well, sometimes they're hidden inside the unopened flower buds. They're not always on the leaves. So on the right of the screen, you'll see the eggs are smaller than the head of a pin. And they're a whitish, creamy white, almost a little pale yellow. Once you start training your eye to see them, you will see them. It'll take a little while, but once you start focusing on where to find them, you'll find them. This is my front courtyard. This is my favorite slide. Where's Waldo? Can you see the filaments on the caterpillar's head? Yeah, look at how good he's hidden in those unopened. That's tuberous. That's Asclepias tuberosa. It's the only milkweed in Michigan that does not have the milky sap. And it's native. This is Asclepias incarnata. This is swamp milkweed. And these two caterpillars that are hanging side by side, they've done a thing called flagging. They make a notch in the leaf where it attaches to the stem. It causes the leaf to drop, and it causes the flow of sap to stop. So they don't gum up their mouth. Because if they get that latex sticky stuff on their mouth, it sticks their mouth shut. So they perform this technique called flagging, and they don't have a problem with the milky sap dripping on them. And these guys are in the final instar. Caterpillars for the monarch family go through 5 instars. They're ready to crawl away and form a chrysalis. Here's your chrysalis. To me, I think it's one of the prettiest. The gold on there actually looks like jeweler's gold. It sparkles like your prettiest ring. I did talk to the scientists out at Dallas Arboretum, and they were doing some research on that. They thought it might regulate the amount of light that comes into the chrysalis, but they're still studying it. This is sitting on the inside of my window. It's attached to a small stick. So can you see the pattern? Isn't that gorgeous? And you think it's turning black. You think something happened to your pretty green chrysalis, but it's not. It's turning clear, and you're seeing the black wing inside. That was in my habitat, excuse me. So it takes about an hour for it to become clear. On the morning, this happens about 7 or 8 in the morning. And within an hour, you'll have that emerging butterfly. They need about 2 hours to dry their wings. This one is newly emerged. You can tell the color is bright. There's no broken edges. And it was feeding. I had the camera right next to this butterfly, and it was so busy feeding. This is a cup plant. It's a Michigan native. Does anybody here grow cup plant? I know Irene has it. Yeah, you guys. This is a very good pollinator plant. It's good for tree frogs. The leaves clasp the stem like a cup. That's why it gets its name, and collects rainwater. Little tree frogs will sit in the water. Goldfinches love these flower heads when they go to seed. It feeds so many of your pollinators. And then it has roots that go down 14 to 16 feet that break through clay and create channels for your rainwater. So it's also used in rain gardens. This is peak migration in my front yard. There was a swirl of butterflies. The kids were getting off the bus, and I said, guys, come on over here. They call me the butterfly lady, so they know they're either going to take home caterpillars or butterflies. And I said, this is like a monarch snow globe. They were all around the house swirling. We couldn't even count them. So in this picture here on the left, there are 5. Everywhere you pointed your camera, you get like 5, 6, 7 butterflies. And then the one on the right is Solidago, goldenrod, it's known as. And this was taken in Grand Haven in the fall. So that's the importance of having early spring, middle to late summer, and then fall blooms. You need to span the seasons. People have asked me, how big is a tag? Like the end of a pencil eraser. So this past year, we used all 50 tags. Next year, I'm going to order 100. And it's got an alpha and a numeric code on it. And Monarch Watch, we send all our data to that organization. And if anybody reports your tag with your butterfly, you can find out how far did it get, how long did it live, did it make it to Mexico. Our butterflies that leave in September go all the way to Mexico, and they spend the winter there. The final generation lives 9 to 10 months. It's also called the Methuselah generation. The butterflies in June don't live 10 months. They mature sexually, reproduce, and then they die. But the butterflies that fly in September do not reproduce. They turn off the hormones that help them mature, and they can make it all the way to Mexico and hopefully survive the winter in Mexico. Has anybody seen a red-spotted purple? These are gorgeous butterflies. They're very metallic, that blue purple at the bottom. So look at the size of that butterfly next to the cone heads. These are my echinacea. This is the spot that I always find them. I have white, tall summer phlox, and I have many, many colors of coneflower that are echinacea. A very good native plant for Michigan. They're used to our heat, our humidity, our soil types, and they can handle drought once they're established. So I would say coneflower, the echinacea, is a very good choice for a butterfly garden. Same butterfly, red spotted purple, here's the underwing, taking nectar from buddleia, butterfly bush. My friend in Dallas said, why is it called red spotted purple? I don't see any spots. It's like, oh, you gotta look underneath. There they are. And these are swallowtail eggs. Again, smaller than the head of a pin. I was working in the butterfly house, and it was, I think it was 102 in the butterfly house. So I was instantly sweating. And I had been arranging dill plants and fennel plants to bring them out for customers. So I had the oils all over me. And I must have smelled like a fennel or a dill. And she was thirsty. So first she started sipping the sweat off my arm. And then she started laying eggs on my arm. So I'm scurrying over to the plant like, oh, no, no, no. Because as soon as a breeze comes through, they come out wet. And as soon as a breeze blows on them, they stick. They're like glue. So I'm pushing them onto the dill plant. And they did eventually develop into caterpillars. I did not take those home with me. And at weekends for the kids, if they want to learn the development of a caterpillar, Irma Wigan would give them the plant and say, oh, here, this is the plant you want. Let's put some caterpillars on it. She makes sure that the kids get caterpillars. So for the black swallowtail, this is called the early instar. This is when they still have a saddle marking. That's what that lighter color is on their back. It makes them look like a bird dropping, so nobody eats them. That's a pretty costume. But this is what it turns into. This is the older star. It's the black swallowtail on rue. I have rue plants in my yard, which is also a good perennial. If they eat all your parsley, dill, fennel's too big, they won't eat the whole fennel. But if they eat all your parsley and dill, make sure you have rue as a backup. And rue does cause a photosensitivity. So if you brush it on your skin, make sure you wash your hands when you're done working with rue, because it'll turn red and blotchy and itch. I've only had that happen once. I must have been in the rue too long. This is the black swallowtail later stage. If you see them hanging in a J upside down, don't touch them, don't move them, don't disturb them. They're getting ready to reveal their chrysalids. So in the final stage, they get so big they can't be inside that skin anymore, and that old skin pops off and they reveal their chrysalids. I think it's a pretty caterpillar. So on the left, there's an example of some of the colors a chrysalis can be. I have seen it cement color on the back of a statue in the Wiegand's butterfly house. I have seen them green if they're on a green stem. I've seen them brown if they're on a brown stem. This was my little experiment I did at home. I thought, I wonder what color they change, because I had only seen them cement colored in the butterfly house. And then I had these at home changing, and I thought, I wonder if that brown one is viable. That brown one stayed as a chrysalis from June, end of June, to the following May, last week of May. I put that little 4-inch square pot on my garden shelf, no protection from ice and snow, and it emerged. So don't throw your chrysalids away when they turn brown. They're not dead. This is called a silk girdle. When it attaches itself to the stem, it uses little strands of silk. And this one, if you look close, you can see the pattern of the butterfly. The chrysalis is starting to look transparent, and within a couple hours, this butterfly was emerging. And this is what it was. This is the one that sat on my garden shelf all winter in the ice and snow. And I was working an event somewhere, and my husband says, there's something going on with that chrysalis. I don't know what's wrong. And I said, oh, I think it's emerging. And my husband took this picture. So this is a male. See all the yellow spots? The female has some yellow markings, but not like this. And the female has mostly blue. The male has some blue, mostly yellow. These are common in your yard. Here's our female, feeding on penta, all that pretty blue. And again, I'm wondering if these are false eye spots down at the bottom where it looks red and yellow. That might be a pattern that looks like an eye spot. There she is. So let's talk about the shape of the antenna. How do you know if it's a moth or a butterfly? Can you see the curve at the top of that antenna? Kind of looks like a club. Those are called clubbed. And then there's some that look like it has a knob on the top. It's kind of circular, but it looks like a knob. Moths don't have these kind of antennae. And then people wonder, why is it a swallowtail? Here's the swallowtail right here, this tail. There's one long one on each wing. And if a bird tries to grab it, the tail breaks off, doesn't hurt the butterfly, and they can still fly away. So they have two chances to get away with their wing, just with the swallowtail. And this is a male that I had raised in my habitat. This probably emerged in November. Oh, it popped up again. I was feeding it nectar on a cotton ball because there were no more flowers outside. And it lived a couple weeks in the house. Well, I'm hearing voices from the Zoom. Okay, why is this not advancing? Let's see, no, it's not working either. It's stalled a little here. Okay, there we go. Spice bush. Has anybody heard of a spice bush butterfly? They're in our yards. Host plant is the spice bush. These are the eggs under the leaf. They're not tight clusters and they're not single. And sometimes more than one female will lay this group. Thank you. So look under the leaves if you're looking for eggs for certain species. And here's what our spice bush caterpillar does to protect itself. So we've said the word a couple times. What are those called on its back? Eye spots. They're false eye spots. So they get up and they wave themselves around, and a bird thinks it's a tree snake and goes away. And this caterpillar is this big, but they wave. Go away. They are cute. And then they also turn orange. This is not the final color. They'll turn orange and then they form a chrysalis. So one of the nursery guys at Wigan said, I got a present for you. It's like, oh yeah, a caterpillar. Here's the spice bush butterfly, another swallowtail. In Michigan, we have 4. We have the spice bush, we have the pipevine, we have the eastern black. We also have a tiger swallowtail female that usually is yellow with black stripes, but sometimes when she wants to protect herself, she'll turn black. She'll have all black with ghost stripes. She doesn't have the bright yellow. Why does she do that? She wants to look like a pipevine who eats a plant that has chemicals in it to protect the caterpillar and the butterfly. That's called mimicry. She can actually change her color to protect herself. So here's our pipevine. In the butterfly house, there was a statue, and I glanced over one day and it looked like the lady had put an ornament in her hair. And it was the butterfly sitting there. I've also picked chrysalids off the back of her hair. One time they were near her ears. They look like earrings, monarch chrysalids. Here's the pipevine female. So how do you know that's a female? If you can't see the top wing, how do you know? Look at her body. It's like the letter C. She's dabbing eggs on the bottom of the leaf. So when you see her flitter, she'll take a few sips of nectar and then she goes to her host plant. If she starts to curve her body like the letter C and do dabbing motions, she's putting eggs down. And there's her caterpillar. It looks like a giant gummy worm. They have nodules and they have these things sticking out. They're not hairs. They're not poisonous. And when you pick them up, they do feel like a giant gummy worm. They won't hurt you, but they are kind of cool. And this is the caterpillar that they write about in Alice in Wonderland. If you see the picture in the book, it's smoking a pipe. It's a pipeline caterpillar. So let's see. Look at that chrysalis. Looks like a leaf sculpture to me. And when I was working in there, I'd show the chrysalids to the kids. And even though I knew where they were, I'd forget and I'd have to go searching for it because they look so much like a leaf. Now, this is our eastern tiger. Have you seen these in your yard? They're big, they're hard to miss. They're so bright. This one was on my butterfly bush taking nectar. There's the tiger stripes, that's where it gets its name, those black stripes coming down. And you see the swallowtails, there's the two tails down here. Oops, too fast, sorry. This tiger swallowtail, I raised my very first one last summer. My neighbor has a sweet bay magnolia, and I had seen the female. She was taking nectar from my rhododendrons. Who knew? I didn't know butterflies go to rhododendrons. Then she went to his sweet bay magnolia and started laying eggs. So when he came out, I said, if you see me pulling leaves, can I just have a couple to feed the caterpillar? I found an egg. And that's what it turns into. It actually will develop bigger eye spots. This is one of the early stages. It's not fully grown there. It was actually resting between feedings. So if you see your caterpillar stop eating for about a day, 12 to 24 hours, they're just resting. So it's like if you have clothes that are too tight or uncomfortable, they have to pop that skin and get a fresh skin. So similar to what a snake does. They can only grow so much and then they have to rest and stop eating. They'll crawl out of it. They attach with a silk thread to the back, attach to the leaf, crawl out of the old skin. And they're very vulnerable when they're moving out of that skin. That's when they get picked off kind of easy. Bird food, caterpillars are bird food. Tiger swallowtail, proboscis. I did put an arrow there, but I don't know. Can you see the curve? There is a proboscis there. Coneflowers, again, that's where I find most of my butterflies. The giant swallowtail and the tiger swallowtail love the Asiatic lilies. They just love them. I think because they have a proboscis that's big enough to get up into that where the nectar is stored. So you'll also notice there's bees and butterflies that are scaled to the size of the flower. I've been noticing that. The more I change my yard into natives, the more I see different bees and even beetles and wasps. I have parasitic wasps. And then the way I research this is this little ball bill thing sitting between the stem and the leaf. That's how I know this is not a Michigan Turk's cap. Irene, do you have Turk's cap lilies? No? Does anybody here have the native Michigan Turk's cap? Those are great for hummingbirds and butterflies. And they come back. They can survive our winter. It's a bulb. Here's your giant swallowtail caterpillar. What does that look like to you? Poop. It's supposed to. It's supposed to look like a bird dropping. So the gals out at Knoll Cottage said, we got something up here. Do you want to come see it? Of course, I scurried over there with my camera. It was on the gas plant. And is anybody here from Knoll? Dictymus, say it for me. Dictymus, thank you, Dictymus alba. I had never seen a gas plant before. I didn't know what it was called, but I knew the caterpillar. So she allowed me, I think you gave me one. We left the rest. She gave me one to raise. This is our giant. So from this to this, top on the left is the upper side of the wings. Lower right is the underside. All yellow on the bottom, mostly black on the top. Looks like two butterflies stuck together. And they're so big. They're our biggest butterfly in Michigan. The wingspan's over 6 inches from wingtip to wingtip. They don't fly like any other butterfly. They drift. To me, they look like a little piece of tissue just floating around the yard. They're gorgeous, even to the point that their body on the bottom is yellow. This is yellow. The top of the body is black. It's gorgeous. Here's our surprise visitor. So I'm out there taking pictures of, I was trying to get a picture of my hummingbird, and instead I get the clear-winged moth. And it's like, oh my gosh, is that a giant bee? I thought maybe I had some mutant bee in my yard. So I'm looking it up, like what's yellow and black striped with clear wings? It's called a clear-winged moth. It's not that they lost or rubbed the scales off, but when they emerged from the chrysalis, there are no scales there. Look, you can see the white flocks showing through the clear wing. And so how do you know it's a moth? Look at the antennae. These are called filaments. And I know this is a female because she doesn't have the big plume antennae. The males look like a big feather. This is a female. And she has a tufted tail and she flies like a hummingbird. She hovers like a hummingbird. So here's your exception. This is a moth that feeds during the day. It's not nocturnal, it's diurnal. Diurnal means they feed during the day. So what do you think these, if I didn't have the heading up there, does that look like a bee? It's a fly. Look at the eyes. Look at the eyes on both of those. So one of them has vertical stripes on its body. The other one doesn't. These are both hoverflies. So don't swat these. They're not bees. They can't sting you because they don't have a stinger. And that's on an aster flower. That purple flower is the size of a quarter. So we want to plant for all seasons, early, mid, late. I got my Korean lilac there as my spring one. It just opened today. My orange is the tuberous, the Asclepias tuberosa, which is the milkweed. Some people call it butterfly milkweed. The Latin name is Asclepias tuberosa. And that's a summer one along with those red cone flowers. Then down in the bottom, I have the native asters. They get really tall. So right about now, I'm going to start cutting it. I'm going to cut it a couple times until the first week of July. Then I leave it alone. It will be covered with butterflies in September. That's a painted lady on the aster. So when you design your butterfly garden or a pollinator garden, or you just like watching hummingbirds and butterflies, think of the stair steps. You want your tallest. They can even be a vine or a hanging pot. If you have a balcony and you want to put a hanging pot, you can still attract hummingbirds. Your tallest is your tree canopy. Mine happen to be crab apples. My biggest is my autumn blaze maple, then my crab apples, and then my understory. I don't have Japanese maple because as far as I know, they don't feed my butterfly caterpillars, so I don't have them. But I do have maple leaf viburnum as my shrubs, and I do have New Jersey tea as my shrubs. I literally, with my husband and my couple sons and myself, tore out the shrubs with my hands that don't feed caterpillars. My Catoni asters got rid of the yews, got rid of what was in the island. The berm had a boxwood in there. That was a monster. Doesn't feed my caterpillars, doesn't feed my birds. And I want songbirds. And if you want songbirds, you need caterpillars. If you have baby chickadees in a nest, they need up to 6,500 caterpillars to survive into adult birds. So mom and dad chickadee are feeding up to 6,500 caterpillars for one little nest of 4 chickadees. You have to have caterpillars. If you have nesting wrens, you have to have caterpillars. Nestlings, which are the birds in the nest, they don't eat seeds, they don't eat fruit, they eat caterpillars. So then you move into your grasses and your forbs. Those are important in butterfly gardens. Your perennials, your annuals. If you can find the native annuals, or excuse me, native perennials, those are the most useful because they are used to our soil, they're used to our heat. And once they get their roots established, they're used to our drought. You want tall, medium, and short. And your lowest can be ground covers. I have a juga that is ground cover. It's only maybe 5 inches tall, and the butterflies still find it. So let's go back there. Don't use pesticides if you can help it. If you have to use a pesticide, read the label, read it a second time, be careful. The label says it targets a certain insect. It doesn't. It's indiscriminate. It kills everything. They say it washes out of your soil in so many months. It doesn't. It lingers years, and it can drift. if you're spraying on a heavy day, it can go to your neighbor's yard and kill their plants. That's how I lost my weigela. My hummingbird was feeding on my weigela. The next day, it looked like somebody hit it with a flamethrower. The guy next door had used a product that because I'm a master gardener, I'm not supposed to disparage companies, but we all know what it is. It doesn't wash out of the soil. It harms everything. It doesn't target a specific insect, especially systemics. A systemic is absorbed through the plant, goes into the leaves, the stems, the whole entire plant. It kills everything. It doesn't kill one single bug. Leave your leaves, rake them into your flower beds. I don't even shred them. We just lay them in there, and by spring, they're starting to get a little mushy. When it gets hot, those couple days of heat that we had, they're starting to get crumbly, and I can walk on them and they just crumble apart. And people think I used a whole bunch of mulch. It's my brown leaves. I rake them from the whole yard and put them in the garden. Plant your Michigan natives. St. Clair Shores has a group called the Gardeners. And they used to have a pre-order plant sale. This year, you don't have to pre-order. You just attend the sale and you can buy your natives. That's where I now have 4 species of milkweed, and I got them from St. Clair Shores Gardeners. Right plant, right place. If you have a wet spot, there's plants that like that. If you have deep shade, there's plants that like that. And if you have full sun, there's plants that like full sun. There's some that like wet soil, full sun, dry soil, full sun. So who knew? I had never photographed a firefly until this past summer. Some people call them lightning bugs. Some people call them fireflies. They're neither a fly nor a bug. They're a beetle. And if you throw away every leaf in your yard, you're throwing away next year's fireflies. The immature fireflies live in the soil for up to 2 years and eat snails and slugs. Who knew? Didn't know that. So if you throw away all scraps of all your leaves and put them in bags on the curb, you're throwing away butterfly larvae, pupal casings for your gorgeous moths, your giant silk moths, and you're throwing away your immature fireflies. Other way, there we go. This is the wildlife habitat sign. I just got this last year or the year before. There's a checklist online. You say, yes, I have this, I agree not to use chemicals, water-wise. In MSU, Michigan State Extension has a program called Smart Gardener. I've completed that too. How to get the best out of your garden with the least amount of resource put into it. So we got NABA, that's North American Butterfly Association. My yard is certified. I'm also a Monarch Way Station. We have successfully raised all stages, egg, caterpillar, tagged. We even tag our butterflies. This one is Xerces Society. This is a great place to start if you like to read a little more. They have a campaign called Bring Back the Pollinators. And a beetle can be a pollinator. And down south, a lizard can be a pollinator. If it accidentally crawls through the pollen on a plant and then goes to the next plant, a lizard can pollinate. This is a good book. It's called Butterflies in the Garden from Brenda Dietzick. This is in your handout. This one, Bringing Nature Home, Douglas Tallamay. He's wonderful to read. He's the one that helps you understand that caterpillars are bird food. And if you want songbirds, you have to have caterpillars. And leafcutter bees will cut half circles. If you see a rose leaf looking just gorgeous with a little half circle missing, that's a leafcutter bee. And she's lining her little larvae chamber with the sections of leaves. She lays a larvae, puts a section of leaf, lays another larvae. Mason bees will use your mason houses and do the same. Pollinator-friendly gardening. This is a really good one with photos of plants and plant lists for different types of garden needs. Sunny, shady, tall. This is a relatively new one. I got this at a conference that I attended. This is from Michigan State University Extension. And that's how I discovered butterflies are separate from skippers. I did not know that before. Skippers are considered their own family. This is from Xerces Society, also Gardening for Butterflies. I know they have other publications out there. I just enjoy this one. It's got an essay type format, and people from across the country talk about their successes and failures and surprises. So here's the handout sheet. You have all my resources. This is where I got all my information. I just checked the website last night for the Xerces Society and NABA, and I noticed on their menu bar, it's called Educations. It'll either say resources, education, or it'll say teacher. And if you click in there, they have all kinds of worksheets and plant lists, and they even, Michigan State, you can go by region and country if you're looking for more plants for your area. So click around in the little tabs that say resources, educators, or sometimes it'll say teacher resources. There's no charge to use the Michigan State website. You don't have to be a master gardener, and you don't have to create a password. You can just click on their tip sheets and read them. So this was taken in the kitchen garden. That gorgeous, is Peg here? Spineless, thank you. Spineless artichoke, correct? Okay, ornamental. I noticed, is it about 3 feet tall now? 2 feet? One is? The taller one is where I took this photo. That color was so beautiful. I don't know what to call that, lavender? I don't know. It wasn't periwinkle. That bee is totally covered in pollen. If you enlarge this image, you can see the pollen all over that. So I'll take questions if Nikki has questions. Shade plants for butterflies? I know turtlehead grows in the shade. That's chelone, CHELONE, and that's a good one for fall. That one blooms in the fall just in time for the hummingbirds to fatten up, but it's also, any pollinator will go looking for that one, and it's the white one. Chelone alba, the one with the white blooms. They don't like hot lips. The pink one, they'll pass that one right up. You need the turtlehead with the white blooms. And they like moist soil and they like shade. And ajuga can grow in shade. That's an earlier season plant. That one's short. Dry shade, ajuga can bloom beautifully. So it's called a neonic or a neonicotinoid. And now it's a law that the packaging on these chemicals has to say be safe or be friendly, BEE, the insect bee, be safe, be friendly. And there's a whole list of neonics and harmful chemicals on the MSU website, the extension website. They also have a site called My Garden, MI stands for Michigan, mygarden.edu. And I was reading those lists last night. There's 3 chemicals that are bad for all our pollinators. Neonics, you don't want neonics in your maintenance program. They're harmful. And you don't want your kids walking barefoot on a lawn that you treated with those chemicals, because your skin is your biggest organ and those chemicals soak up into the bottom of your feet. You don't want your kids or grandkids running on grass that has been treated with pesticides. So let me explain what a pesticide and an herbicide. We just talked about the importance of pollinators, the egg stage, the caterpillar stage. That's an insect. Some people call it a pest. I don't call it a pest, I call it bird food. A pesticide targets the pest, but an herbicide targets the plant that feeds the caterpillar. So if you kill your plant, you're killing your caterpillar. So be careful with those chemicals. They do travel. They travel by wind and water. They don't stay where you put them. Hi. Oh, so she asked, when I take butterflies, how is that done? In September, we have found around the 13th is peak tagging season, but we know already, because I've been doing it so many years, the end of August through September is when I know I have to target that the longest living generation. If I get the third generation, they don't go to Mexico. So I'd be wasting tags if I put them on the third generation. I have to put them on the fourth generation. And in Michigan, our monarchs come up from Mexico, travel through Michigan and go up into Canada. And you can have 2 generations flying north as 2 generations are starting to fly south. So you have to know which generation to tag. That's the most important. Then we catch them with a net, or they're in my habitat and I just pick them up and put the tag on them. I'm a crafter, I make cards. So I have a scrapbook tool that's called a pick. And it just gets the edge of that little tag and I just hold the wings like this. It's called a clothespin clip. You just close your fingers across the wings because I don't want to break the wings and I don't want to rub the scales off. And then I give them this finger and they put their legs on there and hang on. So then you press for just a few seconds, 5 or 6 seconds. And then I let go and I wait till they sort of calm down. And then I walk them over to a nectar plant and I just do this and let them sit because I don't want them just getting startled. And it's been fun. And then my husband has told me not to tell anybody this. He retired from GM. He says, don't tell who I work with that I'm running around with a butterfly net, because he does. He can tag better. He can net them faster than I can. How many did you get one time in the net? 3 monarchs at one time, one swoop. So if you want to see a demonstration in September, come to my yard in Sterling Heights. Any other questions on development? Go ahead. So the comment was a lot of the gardeners use a combination of soap, water, and oil for certain insects and diseases. I know scale insects, you have to have oil because it smothers them. That's why you use the oil. If you have aphids, you can either knock them off with a hard stream of water or just a weak soapy solution. And anything with a soft body, the soap absorbs into their body and gets them. They're not going to survive. Japanese beetles, the way they fly, they drop down first and then they take off. So when I was in the MSU class, they said, you just need a little plastic dish with some soapy water and you sweep your hand over the top of the plant. Well, they start to drop and then you knock them into the soapy water because that's what they do. Their flight pattern is they drop and then they take off. So you can just swoop your hand and they go into the plastic container with the soapy water. I do like Murphy's oil soap. When I bring in my houseplants in the fall, I douse the soil with a very weak solution of Murphy's oil soap. It's an oil soap. It smells good. It won't hurt my plant. It doesn't kill the foliage, but it does. If there's any crawling insects in the soil, it discourages them, gets them out of there. It works well. Dish soap, I know that Dawn was in the publications that I read as being very effective for use in a garden. But again, you dilute it. Don't use it full strength. Don't use Dawn to clean your glasses. I have permanent etching on my glasses from Dawn dish soap. Who knew? Any other questions? Thank you. What city are you in? Troy? So Ann Arbor and Royal Oak agreed to do no mow May. Did you, anybody? We partially did it. I think we cut ours last week because we started getting really tall tufts and uneven growth. No mow May means for the whole entire month of May, you don't mow your lawn. You let those little early spring flowers, dandelions, grow so that you can feed your early emerging pollinators. Because the majority of Michigan bees, I'm right now taking the pollinator champion course. The majority of Michigan bees are solitary ground dwelling bees. They can't build a hive. and they won't build a hive. They have no need for a hive because they're not social bees. They live in a single tunnel where they put their larvae. They're not aggressive. They have no interest in you. But if they emerge in the early spring and they come out and there's no blooms, what are they going to eat? They need dandelions that don't have chemicals on them. But another effective trick I've heard is vinegar and water. If you got weeds growing in your cracks of your driveway, sorry. Your grandma Van used to say boiling water. If she found an anthill close to the house, she'd pour boiling water. I know vinegar water does the same thing. If ants are trying to live by your door, that's supposed to be useful. Don't use chemicals if you can help it. I know there's occasionally a need for it if you have an infestation, but let me say this, over 99% of our insects are beneficial and less than 1% are pests. So we are killing stuff we don't need to kill. They have a job. There's parasitic wasps that are not interested in you, and they're out there to control your tomato hornworms. But if you let that tomato hornworm develop, it is beautiful. It turns into a moth. Any other questions, comments? Are we good? Soil? Oh, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. So she asked, what's a good sign that your soil is good soil? Can you get your hand shovel in there? Can you dig in it? If you have mostly clay, you may want to break it down with a little bit of sand. Sand breaks up clay. Another thing that breaks up clay is the roots of plants that are used in gardens that have poor soil. They either like it or they can break through it and create better soil. Mixing in compost and manure. If you buy aged compost with manure, it has no odor and it won't burn your plants. And that's what I do. I buy bags of compost and manure. Mulch, leaving the leaves will improve your soil. Mulching your soil will improve your soil. If it's really, really hard and you can't put your shovel in, if you put a nice layer, 2 to 3 inches of mulch, it will be worked down into the ground by your insects and organisms. And another thing, if you don't have worms, your soil is not healthy. You need worms. If that soil is so hard packed that worms can't live there, that's not helping your plants. And then there's plants it's called companion planting. There's some plants in the pea family that introduce nitrogen back into the soil. And there's plants, so who's a vegetable gardener? Tomatoes, anybody that grows tomatoes, you already know basil, isn't basil number 1? Lemon balm is my antimicrobial and takes care of fungal and viral problems with tomatoes. Lemon balm. So basil is really good to companion plant with your tomatoes. Then there's also a list of things you should never put together. And then tomatoes should never be planted in the same spot in the same soil year after year. You have to change because it will introduce things in the soil that you don't want there next year. So tomatoes need to be rotated. You have to put them in different places with different soil, right, Irene? To get the best tomatoes. Yeah, and I grow tomatoes in pots. I don't grow them in the ground. So I give them fresh soil in my tomato pots. My flower pots that I plant mixed pots, I take out part of the soil, put in compost and manure, mix it together, put in Osmocote pellets. Osmocote pellets last 4 to 6 months. They don't slow release because you watered them. They slow release when the temperature is warm enough in the soil. So if it's too cold, the Osmocote pellets don't release. Slow release is good, you want that. And then another way to see, did you have a plant that was flowering beautifully for 3 or 4 years and now this year it's not doing anything? And yeah, it's either too crowded and needs to be split. It's not getting enough sun. Roses need 8 hours. Or roses are heavy feeders. They need to be, who's our rose gardeners? Rose gardener people? Talk to the rose garden ladies and they will give you all kinds of good advice on how to get them blooming again. Deadheading is important. You do take the old ones off. The more you remove the old flowers, the more you get new growth. Any other questions? Is, and nobody else in the chat room? Okay. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Butterfly houses look cute and they're ornamental. No butterfly will go in there. You know who lives in my butterfly house? Spiders and earwigs like butterfly houses. No butterfly with a half an ounce of brain will go in a butterfly house because there's a spider waiting. Is that good? Questions answered? Everybody's good? We can mingle. I don't think there's a rush to get out of here. Start finding those gardeners in the crowd that can help you. Thanks a lot for coming today.